The cross is the form of the Logos. The cross is the form of the Logos. You see, when Christianity ultimately gets verified by the Spirit, it's not usually essentially from assent to the historical proposition that Jesus was a person. That's believed in for sure, but it's not decided by you finding some document that showed that, oh, here's a tax, receipt for a camel Jesus bought. It's not like that. That's not how the thing works. It doesn't work by those kind of verification of standards. No, it works because you know that God exists. You can know that God exists through reason as the actualizer of potentialities. You can start to get an idea of, and you can just know it. A lot of people just know it obviously. It's just obvious to a lot of people that obviously there's God, totality, singularity of goodness, conceptuality. Once you know that, but then you can start to see the world in a radically new way, looking for information that would lead you to the proper understanding of God. And the cross simply articulates itself, once seen properly, as not just the part of the story, they nailed him to this terrible cross, but ultimately he was, great, and because he was God and came down and told us what to do. No, that's a very, very shallow way to understand who Christ is, what Christ was about. It's not just about God coming down and telling us what to do, which we make fun of, but secretly, that's obviously what we want, because we have deep, deep, terrible, underlying bottom of our soul anxiety about what to do morally, how to behave, what's going on. And ultimately, we want God just to come down and tell us what to do. Well, he kind of did that. He did that in his way with parables, very much like, a wise, Zen master or Yoda. Jesus was very Yoda-like. No, what he does is he comes down and shows us how to live by becoming what is clearly, you just see, the God form. The cross is the God form. Singularly, it aesthetically assents, you assent to it aesthetically. You give up the will towards your understanding of it as the God form. Because if Christianity is true, it has to be like this. It can't be just as shallow as people think. It's got to be that to see Christianity is not only to see the revelation of God in Jesus Christ, but the revelation of God of Jesus Christ. As if Jesus Christ is the story on every level, the meaning structure through which to understand how God functions, how God works. Not just in Jesus Christ proclamations of moral behavior, but in the whole function of what it would mean for God to make reality like this. What would it mean for God to have an incarnation, to play out this kind of story, to put it in this kind of world, to limit miracles as much as he does, which makes us doubt, because, there's nothing an atheist wants more to just change his mind than crazy shit to start happening. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Yeah, because now, magic can happen, so therefore God exists. That's what the magic is all around you, man. A video game has rules. But it's an aesthetic understanding. The God form is the cross. That's why it keeps rearticulating itself in many different ways. But that's ultimately how God understands himself in some kind of radically objective, singular way. That you participate in God's own weird understanding of his own objective totality, which is somehow radically determined from eternity. God knows he, in a sense, didn't have to be this form, and yet he always was this form. And it just can't be any other form. This form exists, and it can't be wrong. The cross can't be wrong. The cross, for sure, is not evil. In terms of Jesus' participation in it. It is truly good. It asserts its goodness in a radically total way. 'Tis a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done before, taken to the stretches of metaphysical totality. Yes, there are beautiful things about every point of view in the world, but it's just very weird about Christianity, the way that the narrative of it and the symbolic form of it asserts itself as radically, objectively true. It's kind of horrifying. It's horrifying that there's something this metaphysical and objective that's so out of the bounds of you that you shouldn't be able to know this. I mean, that's why it has the force of a revelation. But you can kind of trust it because so many other people have gotten the message. Although only few of them have gotten it deep enough to really understand the game they're in. You're not in a adventure in your human life. You're in the adventure of existence. The adventure. You're on the adventure. Are you ready to live that out? Are you ready to pursue that? Are you ready to really let Christianity be more than you ever expected? Are you really ready to see Christianity as good, really good? Good. Again, see, good. A true Christian should believe that it would be good, radically good, hysterically good, if Jesus, as a concept, did take over the world. Not through force, not through any kind of coercion, but through the goodness of the Holy Spirit embracing people's hearts and changing their souls. It would actually be good for Christianity to win. And it would be bad, ultimately, if anything else won, including pluralism. Christianity, though, in itself, needs to create a philosophical worldview with the cross at the center that can be truly Catholic and incorporate as much of the world, integrate as much of it into it as possible, as long as the cross is always at the center of the story and the incarnation in Jesus Christ. Because it's radically objectively true. You can participate in the radical objectively trueness of it. Trueness of it. You can participate in that by just seeing it yourself and going, my God, I see it like God sees it, because you're seeing it how Jesus saw it before it happened. Because Jesus saw the God form too. And when it came true, yeah, he knew he was God. He knew he was God. He knew a man knew he was God. We don't think about Christ objectively enough in terms of Christ as an objective aesthetic structure put in the world by God to inform us about reality. We don't think about it objectively enough, but we also don't think about it subjectively enough. Sometimes I even wonder at all. What the hell was it like to be Jesus Christ? the information we have does not imply that he was riding on waves of mystical eros all the time, you know, floating on some sort of ethereal experience plane. That is not the vision we have. We have an entirely human vision. With these miracles, these isolated miracles that he's performing all the time, but his experience of his personality, he is a man. He's a guy. What was it like to be Jesus Christ? How do Christians not ask themselves this central question all the time? Isn't this the whole point of the story, that it's not primarily about you following orders as if from a drill sergeant to a young cadet? Which is how we want to play the dynamic most of the time. Drill sergeant, tell us what to do, sir. And the drill sergeant barks something at you and you go, sir, yes, sir. Now that's a good instinct to have with God. You want to be obedient. But only because obedience gets you to the point where you really can start to admit what Christianity is about. It's not about just following the orders of this guy. He gives us the rules so you can play the game. And the way you start to play it is to start to really ask yourself the question, what was the experience of Jesus like for Jesus? Jesus loved his life. We have this image that Jesus... Our images of Jesus are weird and terrible, especially the closer they get to modernity. We don't know how to visualize or symbolize Jesus anymore. They had it better in the olden days, when if it was the Renaissance, they would just put him in a Renaissance costume. We have no way to even see Jesus as a human anymore. He has become an idol. He's become an idol in our representation structures. It's the last thing Jesus is. Who was this guy inside? What is the experience of the cross like for this man? He loved his life. He loved his life more than any man has ever loved his life. Why? Because he knew he was God. And therefore knew he had a responsibility to love his life, you see. A responsibility to love. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? It's not about following orders. He wants so much more than that. It's not about an insurance policy that you're just keeping so that when you finally expire from this vale of tears, maybe you'll get whisked away to the light. Close shave, made it out of that one. It's not what it's about, guys. It's not what it's about. That's the sad story of a fallen world. That is what Jesus came to liberate us from. The kingdom of heaven is within you. What was it like to be Jesus Christ? What's the real good news? What would it mean if it were really worthy of God? Man. The cross is the form of the Logos from eternity. It is the lock you're the key. Because he opened the door.